now Radovan Karadzic in the International Tribunal for the former Yugoslavia.
But what you're saying is that first you sort of have to gather an international consensus.
Yes.
And it's that pressure that forces the government itself to hand over its citizens that are accused of these crimes.
There is that. There is also the idea, and there is, you can see the imbalance. For instance, there's a lot of politics in the international system. Superpowers are less likely to be brought under UN scrutiny than developing countries, which is one reason why they decided to scrap the UN Commission on Human Rights, and they have now a Human Rights Council, which has a system called the Universal Periodic Review. Again, the word universal. Every single member country of the UN is going to go through a review of their human rights situation.
According to an objective standard.
Well, once again, the council is made up of governments and diplomats, but that's better than having no review at all.
Now, going to the question that was raised earlier by BJ, can you explain to us the relationship between our laws and international laws? For example, if there is any Filipino official or any Filipino citizen accused of human rights violations, what is the coverage of our system of justice, and where does the international system play into this?
Well, in the Philippine Constitution, both the 1934 and the 1987 say that whatever is a treaty that the Philippines is a party to is part of our law. So the fact that the Philippines is a member party of all of the 7 core human rights treaties is very, very important, because then that makes it part of Philippine law. The international system, however, first, once again, recognizing sovereignty, says that domestic remedies have to be exhausted. So we first have to have complaints at the domestic level, go all the way up to the Supreme Court before it goes, international bodies will take
now,
recognition.
if, for example, if there's a convention that we signed on to as a country, there has to be a local piece of legislation that sort of gives teeth to that convention?
That is one of the obligations. Each treaty has several things in common. First of all, the Article 2 of no discrimination. It also requires the country to have local legislation to put it into place, to make it implementable, and to have legal remedies. We have been a member or party to the Convention Against Torture for the past 21 years, and we still don't have a law.
Okay.
I'd like to use this point, Manolo, to explain that it's not just the executive branch then that has obligations for human rights protection. Our Congress is supposed to also pass these laws, and our judiciary is supposed to give these legal remedies equal protection.
No, it takes some time. For example, the writ of amparo
Yes.
Was in many ways a recent innovation by the Supreme Court, but taking into consideration this whole human rights scheme. So, but it took, what, 20 years since
Yes, well, one is laws take some time. There has to be a buildup of either interest or public pressure or some education, once again, for the people who are holding the authority to realize this is really something important.
Okay, there's a question here from the floor.
Yes, this is from Mary Chris, and she's asking us, isn't government's refusal to educate on artificial contraception a violation of women's rights?
Let me step into this question because it's something I wanted to raise. Much of the struggle over human rights taking place now is because you have more ancient belief systems fighting with the international agreements and conventions, particularly on women and minority rights. How do we sort these things out?
That's very much a challenge, Manolo. It's not just the Philippines. We have countries which have even more, shall we say, ancient practices that are really against human rights, such as female genital mutilation or even the treatment of children. And they say, well, but that's our culture. And ironically, the Universal Declaration says we have a right to our culture. The point is that these rights are supposed to supersede any cultures. And culture is, this was discussed in a recent UN meeting, Culture is an agreement of a society over time. No culture is stuck
Static.
forever.
Yeah.
Exactly. May I go back to this international system? Every single treaty has a treaty body. It's supposed to monitor once again the country's compliance with all the provisions of this. One of the earliest one is called the Human Rights Committee, even though it focuses on civil and political rights. And very interestingly, just recently, there was a complaint by a human rights NGO about the current administration in the Philippines. And the committee did say that the government has not lived up to its human rights obligations. Not because supposedly any government official or person did any killings, but they said that the government has to make enough effort and show real sincere effort to investigate.
To get to the bottom of all these allegations.
And to bring these perpetrators to justice.
Okay, we have time for one more question, I believe.
It's actually a comment from Jenny, and she says the real truth is that only the rich and powerful decide who benefits and claims human rights.
But I would dispute this, Jenny, if you're watching, because I do believe it's a fair statement to say that there are many cases where it's the downtrodden and the disenfranchised who have asserted their human rights, even if powerful people have opposed it.
We still have a power imbalance. I think Jennifer feels very strongly about this. But we have at least moved much, much further from the days when we were a Spanish colony, when we were an American colony, and when we were under Japanese occupation. And we have, at least in the Philippines, a very vocal civil society, whether it's for the urban poor, whether it's for the peasants. We see them marching. At least there is a space for people to complain. The sad thing is that right now we do not have all of the resources, we do not yet have a system, and we don't have a society where even individuals and the people in power can fully respect human rights.
Usually at the end of this program, I give my editorial, but I wanted to give it up to you because for a very practical reason, that everyone sort of hears about the institution you belong to, but no, and everyone feels you're doing something important, but your hands are tied. So I'd like you to ask you to tell our viewers what the individual citizen can do so that they're not just waiting for you to act something, but they can do something themselves.
How much time do I have?
You have 2 minutes.
All right. First of all, this Universal Declaration of Human Rights says that every individual has an obligation to respect everybody else's human rights while enjoying our human rights. The Commission on Human Rights is mandated to look into violations. We do give assistance to victims, but we would like everybody to first of all know their rights so that they can demand it. They know where to go, not just to the CHR. We have a public attorney's office. We have the fiscal's office. We have a human rights affairs office in the PNP as well as in the AFP. There are many other government agencies, and there are individuals in every institution that are very, very willing to help and want to look at it. But I would also like to get, maybe we can conscript our students here to become UDHR advocates. I would like to thank you very much, Manolo, for becoming an advocate this week in National Human Rights Consciousness Week. And here is a pocket UDHR for you. But I would like to apologize as well that we don't have the resources to solve everybody's human rights problems.
So sometimes it's solving it ourselves and finding ways within the community.
One of the important things about this UDHR is, remember, we talk about dignity. We're not talking about charity. We want people to be empowered as well.
Okay. Now, thank you, Commissioner Kisumbing and BJ. Thanks for being with us for the first time on our show. And to our standing room only audience from UST and University of Perpetual Help, thank you very much for being with us. And you're going to become propagandists of this little book. I'm Manolo Quezon, and this is The Explainer.